Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. We're taking you far from our usual topics to Southeast Asia, specifically Cambodia. Nestled between Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam, Cambodia has a rich history, but today we're focusing on a really grim period of that history, the era of Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge. So, who was Pol Pot? Pol Pot's journey from a humble student to a totalitarian dictator is a dark and complex tale. Born as Saloth Sar in 1925 in a rural village, he was among the fortunate few in Cambodia who had the chance at higher education. His family, though farmers, were reasonably well off and had connections to the royal family. These connections and resources made it possible for him to go abroad for his studies. When he arrived in France, he initially enrolled in engineering courses. But it wasn't circuit diagrams or mathematical equations that caught his attention. It was the allure of political ideology. During the 1950s, post-war France was a hotbed of political and social ideologies. The young Cambodian found himself immersed in leftist student groups, absorbing Marxist-Leninist theories that proposed revolutionary change. The cold intellectual climate of Paris, set against the backdrop of decolonization and the surge of communist ideology worldwide, acted as a catalyst in his transformation. Pol Pot didn't complete his formal education in France. Instead, he received an education in revolutionary thought. Upon his return to Cambodia, he joined the country's underground communist movement, aligning himself with other like-minded individuals. It wasn't an easy transition, as Cambodia was experiencing political turbulence and multiple coups that saw power shifting between monarchists and republicans. However, Pol Pot's ideological convictions and his education in France distinguished him among local communists. He was fluent in French, well-read, and carried with him an international perspective that many of his comrades lacked. He became a teacher, using his classroom as a recruitment ground for his political beliefs. Over time, he climbed the ranks of the Communist Party, not just because of his ideology but also because of his ability to articulate and inspire. The Cambodian Communist Party, initially a small faction, slowly gained traction, helped in part by Pol Pot's charismatic leadership and manipulative skills. He was a master at internal politics, skillfully removing rivals or dissenters within the party. Pol Pot's methods were calculated. He played the long game, consolidating his power step by step. When the US-backed Lon Nol regime toppled Prince Sihanouk, Cambodia plunged into chaos, creating the perfect storm for the Khmer Rouge to seize power. Pol Pot's years of groundwork paid off when he led the Khmer Rouge in taking control of Phnom Penh in 1975. His rise was fueled by a mix of ideological extremism, opportunistic politics, and an uncanny ability to manipulate people and situations to his advantage. Once Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge took over Phnom Penh in 1975, things went from bad to catastrophic in the blink of an eye. What happened next was one of the most brutal social engineering projects ever attempted. Pol Pot's vision was utopian on paper but dystopian in practice. He wanted to reset Cambodia back to year zero, to create an agrarian socialist society that eliminated all class distinctions. In reality, this meant emptying cities within 48 hours, forcing people into agricultural labor camps, and instituting a regime of terror that defies imagination. Intellectuals, professionals, anyone who wore glasses, spoke a foreign language, or even those who just appeared intellectual were labeled as enemies of the revolution and executed. Now, how did he pull off these mass killings? That's a haunting question. Pol Pot weaponized fear and ignorance. His reign was filled with show trials and public executions, meant to set examples and sow terror. People were encouraged to spy on one another, even family members reporting on each other. The Khmer Rouge set quotas for executions, so local leaders would randomly accuse villagers to meet their numbers. And it gets darker. The torture methods employed were grotesque. Victims were electrocuted, waterboarded, and had their toenails pulled out in prisons like Tuol Sleng, where only a handful out of around 20,000 prisoners survived. Even more disturbing were the methods of torture and execution. The Tuol Sleng prison, also known as S21, became a symbol of this horror. Out of approximately 20,000 people imprisoned there, only 7 are known to have survived. Detainees underwent unthinkable tortures, from electrocution to waterboarding, and some even had their toenails pulled out. The regime documented its own barbarity meticulously, taking photographs and maintaining records of the executed. One of the most chilling aspects was how Pol Pot managed to manipulate even children. He established youth brigades, turning them into spies and sometimes executioners. Imagine a society so broken that children were made into killers. It's almost unthinkable, but that was the reality of Cambodia under Pol Pot. However, the brutality of Pol Pot's regime also led to resistance, both overt and covert. People risked their lives smuggling rice, listening to foreign radio broadcasts, or even just whispering truth to their children under the cover of darkness. These acts of resistance were rays of hope in an otherwise nightmarish scenario. So, how did Pol Pot sustain this massacre? One word: isolation. He cut off Cambodia from the rest of the world. No journalists were allowed in, no information was allowed out. He even refused international aid, leading to widespread famine. Pol Pot was so bent on maintaining his vision that he let his own people starve, all while stockpiling rice for export. The international community wasn't entirely aloof either. Even though Pol Pot's Cambodia was diplomatically isolated, it still received some form of support, especially from China. Geopolitical interests often trumped human rights, a bitter pill that allowed the regime to sustain itself for as long as it did. Pol Pot's reign of terror ended in 1979 when Vietnamese troops invaded Cambodia. However, the scars he left were indelible. To fully grasp the scale, consider this chilling statistic. An estimated 1.7 million people were killed between 1975 and 1979, which was about a quarter of Cambodia's population at the time. So, what's the takeaway? Pol Pot's life and his brutal regime serve as a chilling testament to the darkest corners of human nature, where ideological extremism, manipulated fear, and the lust for power can bring an entire nation to its knees. It's a stark reminder of the devastation that can be wrought when one man's twisted vision becomes a horrifying reality. Alright, that's it for today's video. It's a heavy topic, but one that needs to be told and remembered. Thank you for joining us, and make sure to hit the subscribe button for more deep dives into history's dark chapters.